Welcome to Conversations with Surestep, an Orthotics podcast series. In this series, certified orthotist and educator Megan Smith and a guest will discuss the latest in pediatric orthotics and how orthotists are changing the lives of patients. Here's Megan Smith.
Our guest today is Anne Perret. So Anne, as one of our educational speakers, some of our audience members may have had the chance to meet you, but for those that haven't, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm a pediatric orthotist, an ABC certified orthotist with 26 years experience. And my current role with Surestep is as a clinical research and education person. And so that just means that I'm traveling and speaking, helping develop content for our education programs, and then helping the development of new products, and then kind of testing outcome measurements for our patients using our current products.
Great, thank you. So today we're going to talk about the Indy 2-stage AFO. So can you tell us a little bit about what the Indy 2-stage is?
I think the Indy 2-stage AFO is really our most versatile product on our product line. It is a custom fabricated AFO, and it has an inner boot. And the inner boot is our Surestep SMO. And so it's really amazing because it's a modular system, meaning that the SMO can be used independently by itself or add it to the AFO for more sagittal plane stability to give better knee control.
Who is the right patient for the Indy 2-stage?
And once again, it's the most versatile of our products because we're using it in our patients with hypotonia as well as our patients with hypertonia, with high tone. We're using it in our young patients who are still working on that early gross motor skill acquisition, but it's also really useful in our patients who are school age, who wear AFOs throughout the day at school, but need that modular component. So when they get home from school, they can take the AFO off and still get down on the floor and do a lot of floor mobility to help them develop their postural control.
Yes, you've really talked about kind of two different age groups here. So tell me a little bit about the itty bitties and why it's a really good solution for them.
So our really young children who are still working on developing their postural control, we need to keep them down on the floor and not interfere with any of those transitional movements. So using the Surestep SMO, we're going to provide the appropriate alignment and stability to the foot and ankle so that they can pull to stand or stand and cruise. We're going to facilitate those weight shifts laterally across the pelvis as well as anterior and posteriorly across the foot. But some of those kids need more support for walking with a walker or walking longer distances or walking outside. And so we can add that additional sagittal plane stability, but not make them use it all the time where it interferes with that floor mobility.
That's great. That's great. What about those older kids that are maybe school-aged? Can you tell me a little bit about them?
Sure. What I found as a pediatric orthotist is our school-aged children, they wear their AFOs all day. They get home and they just shuck them at the door. But they continue to need that great alignment and great stability inside their house. Many of them are school-age, but they could be under the age of 7, and so their foot hasn't completely ossified, or they're really developing a rocker bottom foot if they're a little bit older, and we want to protect that medial longitudinal arch. So keeping them in the SMO for out of school times will really help protect, support that foot and ankle. But once again, just like with our itty bitties, many of them are still working on postural control development. And so by taking that AFO off, they can get on the floor, they can climb, they can crawl, they can do a lot of transitional work and work on that postural control. So we're giving them what they need when they need it and taking away what interferes with those movements when they don't need it.
Right. So it sounds like, again, any age.
Yes, definitely. From our little ones to our older ones. That's the really neat thing about this device.
Now, I know that the Surestep SMO was really designed for patients with low tone, with hypotonia. Can you use the Indy 2-stage on patients with low tone or high tone?
Yes, definitely. And I really like it to use in our patients with high tone because what I find is that I'm really seating that calcaneus back into the AFO. So no more dirty heels where that Achilles tendon is a little tight and we see that heel pistoning up and down in the AFO. So we're keeping that foot really nicely aligned inside of the AFO, shifting that weight back posteriorly to the heel so we can stretch that Achilles tendon. And also the wraparound component of that Surestep SMO, that compression really helps give some proprioceptive input to our patients with high tone. And we know that proprioception is really important for motor control. So if we have patients who have motor control deficits, give them more input to help them work through those motor planning and motor functions.
Yeah, I love that it can be a solution for those patients with low tone that you're trying to, again, correct that calcaneal valgus and that excessive pronation, but also for your patients with high tone that you want to keep seated and also help protect their foot structure as well.
Yes, and for those school-age kids, sometimes there's a little concern that the Indy 2 stage is too bulky, but I think it's pretty typical to use an inner boot to try to get better alignment and positioning of that midfoot and that hind foot. And I feel that using the Surestep SMO as my inner boot actually decreases some of the bulk, despite the fact that we have the chafe and the straps on the SMO. Because remember, our Surestep SMO, if you're familiar with it, it's compressing that foot into a more neutral position. So we're actually kind of narrowing that foot and lengthening that foot so we don't have the big wide spread out part of that foot. And so we've done measurements and we actually don't find that it's particularly more bulky than an AFO with an inner boot. And then you just have that modular ability to just use it as an SMO. So I think that that's amazing that we have a device that works like two different devices.
Can you talk to me a little bit about some of the variations of the Indy 2 stage? Because I've seen it and used it as a solid ankle and articulated or a different type of SMO inside. So can you kind of describe a little bit some of the variations?
Sure. Once again, it's such a versatile product. We determine, as orthotists or physical therapists working together in collaboration, we'll determine how much sagittal plane stability we need for the patient at the ankles. So we have a solid ankle version, a posterior leaf spring version, an articulated version with a free motion dorsiflexion, free motion hinge, and a plantar flexion stop. And then we also have our DA hinge, which gives limited amount of range of motion both in dorsiflexion or plantar flexion that's available as well. And then inside, we have our Surestep SMO, our standard Surestep SMO, or our Surestep toe walking SMO. And we also have the option to have an open heel on the inner boot, the Surestep SMO used as the inner boot, as well as an open heel on the exterior AFO. So there's so much we can do. So if we have a child who tends to be tight in their Achilles tendon, tends to move into that toe walking, we can choose to put a toe walking SMO. So the time that they're not using their AFO, they still get a little bit of a kinesthetic cue to not toe walk.
Sounds to me like an a la carte menu. Where
Certainly.
You can choose your SMO and you can choose your AFO and then marry the two together.
Definitely. And another thing that you can do is you can have a full foot plate or you can have a short Surestep length foot plate with your Indy 2 stage. So there's something to think about that too. And that's another thing that gets rid of a lot of the bulk. With the Surestep SMO as your inner boot, you don't need the side walls on your AFO. And so you can trim them back more proximally and take up a lot of that extra room inside the shoe.
Do you have any other tips and tricks for fitting to reduce bulk or ease of donning in shoes?
Sure. I like to, if I need to add an additional strap onto my AFO in a patient with high tone, we want to keep that SMO really seated in there. I'll ask them to add a little 3/4 inch strap with a smaller chafe, a more narrow strap, and have them attach it a little bit more proximal from the heel, so it's not taking up a lot of room in the heel as well.
Do you have any good analogies of ways to talk to families about why they might need this device?
Sure. I think that it's really important to explain that our patients still need to work on that floor mobility. As parents, we're so focused on walking, and we don't always understand how critical that floor mobility is to helping developing walking skills and postural control. And so I go back to there and just explain to the parents that AFOs are necessary for ambulation for many of our patients, but they're really inhibitory for floor mobility. And we want to give their children the very best opportunity to strengthen their core and to work on those transitional skills and balance in sitting and in crawling and creeping and things like that. So I'll go back to the basics and say we want to give your child the chance to walk well, but also to work on these floor mobility. So we're going to help create a dosage plan, a wearing schedule to let you know exactly when to use the SMO and when to use the AFO and SMO together.
You just read my mind. I was going to ask about dosage. How do you know when to wear just the SMO and when to wear just the AFO?
I find with the younger kids, the itty bitties, that they're really using the SMO for the majority of the day. And if they use an assistive device, they're only adding the AFO for use in a stander or in a gait trainer or in a posterior walker. The rest of the time, we want them transitioning up and down, so they're just in the SMO. And then for our older school age kids, they're really wearing their AFOs throughout the day. And then as soon as they come inside and they're just working on ambulation inside, then they're just using their SMOs. I've had some kids that do Taekwondo and they're using just the SMOs during Taekwondo.
Oh, that's so fun. So fun. Our favorite topic, how do we talk to doctors or physicians about getting these devices?
I think it depends on what specialist we're speaking with. I think our physiatrists can be our best friends in terms of this because our physiatrists are also really focused on more the postural control development. So if we bring that piece with the postural control development and explain that we want to help drive that postural control development by giving them this modular approach, I think that's the best way with them. With our orthopedic surgeons, we want to help them understand that we are protecting that midfoot from that breakdown of that midfoot inside of the AFO, that we are giving them optimal alignment and stability inside of the AFO. And I think that they'll better relate to that way of approaching them.
I love that. I love that. We've talked a lot about kind of who to put it on, what it is. Can you give me a good success story? I want to hear how it's changed a life.
Sure. I have a couple, of course, but one in particular is a little girl named Ellie, and she had very, very significant hypotonia. So she was working on walking in a gait trainer, but her PT really wanted to help facilitate that floor mobility. So we came up with a plan. She had been in a solid ankle AFO, and then her family was told she didn't need it anymore because it was inhibiting all that floor mobility. But they were continuing to work in the walker with nothing, and she was working on standing and cruising with no support. And so we were able to really meet both needs, give her the sagittal plane support for her knee and foot in a little solid ankle AFO that she used inside the gait trainer, and then the Surestep SMOs that she used for the majority of the day. And we just saw such great success working with this. And then it kind of transitioned where she was up and walking more and more. So mom would put the AFO on for a longer period of time. So it went to really she was spending more time in the AFO than just the SMO. But what was so nice is as her postural control developed, she needed less sagittal plane stability at her knees. We were able to engage her extensors, her hip extensors, her trunk extensors. So that took away a lot of the compensations that she was doing at the knee. So she began to control those hamstrings and quads and didn't need as much support. So then we saw her using the AFOs less and less. Eventually, she was able to ambulate just in the SMOs. And after 18, 24 months, her mom told me that she's wearing the SMOs only, no walker. And now mom has to worry about where she is in the parking lot because she can run away now. Mm-hmm. And so it really changed the dynamic of her family. And I really think changed the quality of her life by giving her a chance to develop that postural control. If we had just put her in solid ankle AFOs that she needed for being upright and walking, she wouldn't have been able to do all that floor mobility and really strengthen that core.
Oh, that is such a great story. I love that you were able to give her that mobility and the ability to pick and choose between the SMO and the AFO, and that therapist an extra tool. Do you have anything else that you would like to leave for our therapists and our orthotists listening? Little tips and tricks or any other little information?
I think don't be afraid of it being too bulky. Let the parents know that it's modular. That's the biggest benefit, and that it can help their child grow and get stronger.
Yeah. And I think, our team is always here to help. So
Definitely.
if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help you walk through. If you're curious about what variations you need to use, give us a call.
One more really nice thing about this is sometimes we're on the fence whether a patient needs an SMO or an AFO. And so we don't want to just get them an SMO, but we want all that floor mobility, but we're not sure how much knee control they're going to get that quickly. And so it's so much safer to just get an Indy 2-stage, and then you have an AFO and an SMO, and you can work with the patient and decide which one's best for that appropriate gross motor skill development.
Great. Thank you so much, Anne, for hopping on and teaching us about the Indy 2-stage today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Conversations with Surestep. If you're interested in learning more, click the links in the description or visit us at surestep.net. If you enjoy content like this, let us know. Leave us a like or subscribe to be notified about future uploads. Until next time.